6 months later, Marcus stood in his new office aboard the galactic station Harmony Point reviewing reports from across the galaxy. The walls were covered with communication devices that allowed him to speak with dozens of different species, including a sophisticated holographic sign language translator that Princess Lyreley had helped design. The experiment had not been easy. Marcus's first assignment had been to address a trade dispute between the Silicon Confederacy and the gas giant collectives that had been deadlocked for 15 years. Traditional negotiations had failed because each side insisted on using their own mathematical systems to calculate fair exchange rates, and neither system could account for the other's unique resource valuation methods. Marcus's solution had been shockingly simple. Instead of trying to find a mathematical compromise, he suggested that each side teach the other how their resource valuation worked. The Silicon beings learned about the gas giants' three-dimensional economic models, while the gas giants discovered the elegant efficiency of crystalline computation methods. Not only did they resolve the trade dispute, but they ended up creating an entirely new form of interspecies economic cooperation. His second assignment had been even more challenging. The Voidwalker species had been experiencing what their leaders called existence fatigue, a condition where individuals simply lost the will to continue their dimensional travels and faded away into nothingness. Traditional psychiatric approaches had failed because the Void Walkers experienced reality so differently from other species that conventional therapy was meaningless to them. Marcus had spent weeks trying to understand how beings who existed partially outside normal space-time could feel depression. The breakthrough came when he realized that the Voidwalkers weren't suffering from mental illness. They were suffering from loneliness. Their unique nature meant they could never fully connect with other species, and even connections with their own kind were limited by their interdimensional existence. Working with Princess Lyreley, Marcus developed a communication system that allowed Voidwalkers to share their experiences of multiple dimensions simultaneously. For the first time in their species' history, they could truly understand each other's perspectives. The existence fatigue disappeared almost overnight, replaced by a renewed sense of purpose and connection. But the most significant challenge had come just 2 weeks ago, and it was still ongoing. The Eternal Archive had personally requested Marcus's involvement in what it called the Silence Crisis. Throughout the galaxy, advanced civilizations were discovering that their most brilliant minds, scientists, philosophers, artists, were voluntarily choosing to retreat into isolation. They weren't becoming ill or dying. They were simply withdrawing from society and refusing to engage with others. Some species had lost up to 30% of their intellectual leadership to this mysterious phenomenon. Every approach had been tried. Medical intervention, psychological counseling, offers of greater resources and recognition. Nothing worked. The affected individuals would simply explain that they had seen enough and preferred to spend their remaining time in solitude. Marcus had been studying the problem for weeks when Princess Lyreley made a visit to Harmony Point. She had become something of a celebrity throughout the galaxy, the deaf princess who had helped revolutionize interspecies communication, but more importantly to Marcus, she had become a trusted friend and advisor. "You look troubled," she signed as she entered his office, her 4 hands moving with the fluid grace that had become her trademark. "I am," Marcus signed back, his own hand movements now much more fluent after months of practice. "I think I understand what's happening with the silence crisis, but I'm not sure anyone will believe me." Princess Lyreley settled into the chair across from his desk, her luminous eyes encouraging him to continue. "I think the brilliant individuals aren't sick," Marcus signed. "I think they're overwhelmed. They've reached a point where they understand so much about the universe that they can see all the problems, all the suffering, all the challenges that seem impossible to solve. They're retreating not because they don't care, but because they care too much." The princess's hand stilled for a moment, then began moving in thoughtful patterns, like someone who can hear too much noise and needs silence to think clearly. "Exactly. They're experiencing what humans call compassion fatigue, but on a galactic scale. They can see all the connections, all the consequences, all the pain that exists throughout the galaxy, and it's become too much to bear." Princess Lyreley's signing became more animated. "So the question is not how to bring them back to society, but how to help society become a place they want to be part of again." Marcus felt a surge of excitement as the solution began to crystallize in his mind. Yes, we don't need to fix them. We need to show them that their knowledge and compassion can make a real difference. We need to give them hope. Over the next week, Marcus and Princess Lyrelei worked together to develop a proposal that would have seemed impossible just months earlier. Instead of trying to convince the isolated intellectuals to return to their old roles, they would create something entirely new, the Galactic Compassion Initiative. The idea was to pair each brilliant but overwhelmed individual with specific, manageable problems that they could actually solve. Instead of asking them to contemplate the vast suffering of the universe, they would be given the opportunity to focus their knowledge on helping specific beings in specific ways. More importantly, they would be connected with others who shared their deep caring about the state of the galaxy. They wouldn't have to bear the weight of universal compassion alone. They could share it with others who understood. The response was immediate and dramatic. Within days of the initiative's announcement, brilliant minds who had been in isolation for years began reaching out, not to return to their old positions, but to volunteer for the new program. A renowned crystalline physicist who had retreated from society after discovering the inevitable heat death of the universe volunteered to help develop sustainable energy solutions for struggling colonies. A giant philosopher who had become overwhelmed by the moral complexity of interspecies ethics chose to work on creating guidelines for peaceful first contact with newly discovered civilizations. Most remarkably, the Eternal Archive itself announced that it would participate in the program, offering its vast knowledge to help solve specific problems rather than simply observing the rise and fall of civilizations. Chancellor Thex, who had remained skeptical of human involvement in galactic affairs, was forced to admit that the results spoke for themselves. The silence crisis was not only resolving itself, it was transforming into something unprecedented, a galaxy-wide network of brilliant, compassionate beings working together to solve the universe's most pressing problems. As Marcus stood in his office, watching reports flow in from across the galaxy, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction, not because humanity had proved itself worthy of galactic citizenship, but because the experiment had revealed something far more important. The galaxy itself was capable of change, growth, and compassion when the right conditions were created. Princess Lyrelei joined him at the window, her hand signing a message that made him smile. You know what the most beautiful part of all this is? Every problem we solve creates new possibilities we never could have imagined. The universe keeps getting bigger, not smaller. Marcus signed back. My sister Sarah always said that being deaf didn't make her less than others. It just meant she experienced the world differently. Maybe that's what humanity brings to the galaxy. Not better ways of doing things, but different ways that reveal new possibilities. As they watched ships from dozens of species arrive at Harmony Point, each bringing news of problems solved and connections made, Marcus realized that the greatest discovery of his mission hadn't been about humanity's place among the stars. It had been about the incredible potential that existed when different kinds of minds worked together, when compassion was given equal weight with logic, and when no one had to suffer alone in silence when understanding was possible. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, Marcus thought as he watched Princess Lyrelei sign a greeting to a newly arrived delegation, was exactly as it should be. The debate that followed Princess Lyrelei's proposal was unlike anything Marcus had expected. What had begun as a formal diplomatic ceremony had transformed into something far more significant, a fundamental questioning of how galactic civilization operated. Representatives from dozens of species began sharing stories that had been hidden beneath layers of diplomatic politeness. The Crystalline Collective admitted that their perfectly logical society had been struggling for decades with a mental health crisis they couldn't understand because it didn't fit their rational frameworks. The Aquatic Federation revealed that their underwater cities were experiencing structural problems that their engineering expertise couldn't solve because they had never considered approaches used by land-dwelling species. Perhaps, said Representative Coral Song, her aquatic translation device bubbling softly, we have become so specialized in our own ways of thinking that we have forgotten how to see problems from completely different angles. Chancellor Thex remained unconvinced, his compound eyes scanning the assembly with what Marcus interpreted as growing alarm. This discussion has devolved into emotional testimonials rather than practical policy considerations. We cannot restructure galactic governance based on a single act of human impulsiveness. But then something unexpected happened. A figure that had remained silent throughout the entire ceremony finally spoke. The Eternal Archive, a being so ancient and respected that most species considered it more legend than individual, slowly rose from its position at the back of the chamber. The archive appeared to be made of living metal and crystalline structures that pulsed with inner light. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, carrying the weight of millennia. In my countless years of observing galactic civilization, I have witnessed the rise and fall of 1,000 different approaches to governance and diplomacy. The entire chamber fell into reverent silence. The Eternal Archive spoke perhaps once per century, and its words were considered prophecy by many species. I have seen the benefits of order, protocol, and predictable behavior, the archive continued. But I have also seen civilizations stagnate and die, because they became too rigid to adapt when circumstances changed. Today, I have observed something that has not occurred in over 3,000 years. The archive's crystalline structures brightened, casting dancing patterns of light across the chamber walls. I have seen a being risk everything not for personal gain, not for political advantage, not for the benefit of their own species, but simply because another being was suffering and they had the ability to help. Marcus felt his breath catch as the ancient being's attention seemed to focus on him. Young human, you speak of compassion as if it were common, but in my vast experience it is the rarest quality in the galaxy. Most beings help others when it benefits them, or when they are required to do so by law or custom. Few help simply because help is needed. The archive turned to address Queen Vylara. Your Majesty, your daughter's proposal has merit beyond what she may realize. The galaxy faces challenges that our traditional methods cannot solve, not because we lack knowledge or technology, but because we have become trapped in ways of thinking that prevent us from seeing new solutions. Princess Lyrelei began signing urgently, and Marcus translated, The princess asks the Eternal Archive if this means the galaxy needs beings who think differently, not just beings who think well. The archive's metallic form seemed to ripple with what might have been amusement. The princess understands something that many of her elders do not. Intelligence without diversity of thought leads to sophisticated ignorance. We become very good at doing the wrong things efficiently. Chancellor Thex made one last attempt to maintain his position, but surely the risks of unpredictable behavior outweigh any potential benefits. How can we trust beings who break established protocols whenever their emotions tell them to? The archive's response carried a gentle but unmistakable rebuke. Chancellor, you speak of trust as if it were based on predictability, but true trust is based on character. This human broke protocol, yes, but he broke it to help someone who was suffering. He risked his mission, his career, and his species' future not for personal gain, but for the well-being of someone he had just met. The ancient being's light pulsed brighter. Tell me, Chancellor, if you were in distress and needed help, would you rather be surrounded by beings who always follow protocols, or by beings who care enough about your welfare to break rules when necessary? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus could see various delegates considering the implications, their alien features reflecting the complexity of the choice the archive had presented. Queen Vylara stood and addressed the assembly. The Eternal Archive speaks wisdom that we would be foolish to ignore. I propose that we implement my daughter's suggestion immediately. Humanity will be granted provisional membership in galactic civilization, with the specific role of approaching problems that conventional methods have failed to solve. She turned to Marcus. Human Marcus Chen, you will serve as the first human galactic cultural liaison. Your mission will be to identify situations where human perspectives might provide solutions that traditional approaches cannot. You will have the authority to bypass conventional protocols when you determine that such action is necessary for the greater good. The announcement sent shockwaves through the assembly. Some delegates appeared excited by the possibilities, while others looked deeply concerned about the precedent being set. However, Queen Vylara continued, this arrangement will be reviewed after 1 galactic year. If human involvement causes more problems than it solves, the experiment will end. If it proves beneficial, we will consider expanding human participation in galactic affairs. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He wasn't just representing Earth anymore. He was carrying the hopes of everyone who had ever been misunderstood, overlooked or left behind by systems that prioritized order over compassion. Princess Lyrelei began signing again, and Marcus smiled as he translated her final message to the assembly. The princess says that today has taught her that sometimes the most important conversations happen, not when everyone is speaking the same language, but when someone cares enough to learn a new one. The ceremony concluded with formal acknowledgments and the exchange of diplomatic protocols, but Marcus knew that something fundamental had changed. The galaxy had just agreed to an experiment that could either revolutionize how civilizations interacted with each other, or prove that human unpredictability was too dangerous to tolerate. As the delegates began to disperse, Queen Valara approached Marcus with Princess Lyrelei at her side. For the first time since he had entered the chamber, Marcus saw the queen not as a distant royal figure, but as a mother who had just learned to communicate with her daughter. "There is something else I must tell you," the queen said, her four hands moving in what Marcus was beginning to recognize as nervous energy. "The challenges we will ask you to address are not simple diplomatic problems. They are the kind of issues that have threatened the stability of galactic civilization for generations." The impact of Queen Valara's words rippled through the chamber like a wave. Marcus could see the alien delegates exchanging glances, some nodding in agreement while others appeared to be reconsidering their previous assumptions about humanity. But before anyone could respond, an unexpected voice cut through the silence. "Your Majesty, with respect, this display of sentiment should not influence matters of galactic importance." The speaker was a tall, insectoid being with multiple compound eyes and sharp, angular features. Marcus recognized him from the briefings as Chancellor Thex of the Rigel Consortium, one of the most powerful opponents of human inclusion in galactic affairs. "Chancellor Thex," Queen Valara replied coolly. "Please elaborate on your concerns." The insectoid moved forward with jerky, precise movements. "This human has violated fundamental diplomatic protocols. He spoke without permission about royal family matters and disrupted a formal ceremony. These are not the actions of a species ready for galactic responsibility." Marcus felt his stomach sink. He had expected this challenge, but hearing it voiced so directly made the danger of his situation crystal clear. Around the chamber, he could see other delegates nodding in agreement with Chancellor Thex. "Furthermore," the Chancellor continued, "this emotional manipulation, using the Queen's maternal feelings to gain advantage, demonstrates exactly the kind of unpredictable behavior we fear from humans. They are too impulsive, too emotional, too willing to break established order for personal reasons." Marcus stepped forward, knowing he had to defend not just himself, but all of humanity. "Chancellor Thex, with respect, what you call emotional manipulation, we call compassion. What you call breaking established order, we call recognizing when the order itself is causing harm." The insectoid's compound eyes fixed on him with what Marcus assumed was annoyance. And this is precisely the problem. Humans believe their feelings justify ignoring established protocols. In a galaxy with thousands of different species and cultures, such behavior is dangerous. "But Chancellor," Marcus replied, "isn't the purpose of protocols to serve the beings they're meant to protect? When protocols prevent a mother from communicating with her daughter, when they enforce isolation instead of understanding, shouldn't we question whether they're serving their purpose?" Princess Lyrelei, who had been following the conversation by watching the speakers' faces and body language, suddenly began signing urgently to Marcus. He looked at her hands, then at Queen Valara. "Your Majesty, the princess wants to say something." Queen Valara nodded, her forearms positioning themselves to watch her daughter's signs. "Tell us what she says." Princess Lyrelei's signing was passionate and deliberate. Marcus translated as she moved her hands. "She says that Chancellor Thex speaks of protocols and order, but she asks, what good is order that makes people suffer? She says she has spent her life following protocols that told her to sit quietly and be decorative, but no protocol ever told anyone to try to understand her." The princess continued signing, and Marcus found himself moved by her words. "She says that the human Marcus broke a rule to help her, but every day of her life, people have followed rules that kept her isolated. She asks which is more dangerous, the human who risks himself to help others or the systems that make such risk necessary." Chancellor Thex's mandibles clicked in what Marcus assumed was agitation. The princess is young and lacks experience in galactic affairs. Her personal gratitude should not override practical concerns about human stability. That's when Princess Lyrelay did something that shocked everyone in the chamber. She stood up from her throne and walked directly to Chancellor Thex, her 4 hands moving in sharp, precise gestures. "What is she doing?" the Chancellor asked, clearly uncomfortable with the princess's proximity. Marcus watched her signs and felt a surge of pride for this young woman who had found her voice. "She is telling you that she may be young, but she has spent her entire life watching how different species interact in this very chamber. She says she has observed which beings show kindness to those who are different, and which ones ignore suffering because it is inconvenient." Princess Lyrelay continued signing, her movements becoming more forceful. She says that in all her years of watching, she has never seen any being risk their own position to help someone they barely knew. She says that if the galaxy's protocols cannot make room for such compassion, then perhaps the protocols need to change. The chamber erupted in murmurs and discussion. Some aliens seemed impressed by the princess's boldness, while others appeared scandalized that a young royal was directly challenging a senior diplomat. Queen Vylara rose from her throne, and the chamber fell silent again. "My daughter raises an interesting point, Chancellor Thex. In all the years of formal diplomacy, how often have we seen anyone prioritize another's well-being over their own advancement?" "Your Majesty," Chancellor Thex replied stiffly, "sentiment and individual heroics are luxuries we cannot afford in galactic governance. We need predictability, stability, adherence to established procedures." And yet, a new voice interjected, those very procedures failed to identify a communication barrier that has existed in the royal family for decades. Everyone turned to see who had spoken. It was Ambassador Crix, Marcus's escort, who had remained silent throughout the entire exchange. His 6 arms were trembling slightly, but his voice was steady. "Ambassador Crix," Queen Vylara said, "please continue. Your Majesty, I have been observing human behavior since they first made contact with galactic civilization. I have seen them approach problems from angles that our established methods never considered. Their flexibility has been troubling to many of us because it challenges our assumptions about how things should be done." Ambassador Crix paused, seeming to gather his courage. "But today I have seen that flexibility solve a problem that our most advanced healers and protocols could not even recognize. Perhaps the question is not whether humans can adapt to our ways, but whether our ways can benefit from human perspectives." Chancellor Thex's compound eyes swiveled to focus on Ambassador Crix. "Are you suggesting that we abandon thousands of years of successful diplomatic protocol because one human got lucky?" "No," Ambassador Crix replied. "I am suggesting that we consider whether our protocols are as successful as we believe them to be. How many other beings in the galaxy are suffering in silence because our established procedures cannot recognize their needs? How many problems remain unsolved because we are afraid to deviate from traditional approaches?" Marcus felt a surge of hope as he realized that the conversation was shifting. What had started as an accusation against human unpredictability was becoming a larger discussion about the effectiveness of existing galactic governance. Princess Lyrelay began signing again, and all eyes turned to Marcus for translation. "The princess says that she wants to propose something to the assembly." Queen Vylara nodded. "Speak for my daughter, Marcus Chen." Marcus watched the princess's hands carefully, then addressed the chamber. "Princess Lyrelay proposes that humanity be given a chance to prove their value, not by conforming to existing protocols, but by demonstrating how their different perspective can solve problems that traditional methods cannot address. She suggests a trial period where humans are specifically assigned to situations that have been declared unsolvable by conventional means." The suggestion created an immediate buzz of discussion throughout the chamber. It was unprecedented, radical, and potentially dangerous. It was also exactly the kind of solution that Marcus was beginning to realize was uniquely human, turning a perceived weakness into a strength, finding opportunity in challenge. Marcus stepped closer to the royal thrones, acutely aware that every eye in the chamber was fixed on him. The weight of the moment pressed down on his shoulders like a physical force. He was about to teach an alien queen how to communicate with her daughter in front of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. "Your Majesty," Marcus began, "the first thing to understand is that your daughter's hand speech is not a lesser form of communication. It is a complete language with its own grammar and beauty. When you learn to speak with your hands, you are not stepping down to her level. You are stepping up to meet her in her world. Queen Violara nodded, her forearms positioning themselves attentively. Show me how to say I love you. Marcus demonstrated the sign slowly, using both hands to form the gesture that his sister had taught him years ago. In human sign language, it looks like this, but your daughter has 4 hands, so she may have developed her own variation. He turned to Princess Lyrelei and signed, Will you show your mother how you say love in your hand speech? Princess Lyrelei's face lit up with an expression of pure joy. She had spent her entire life waiting for this moment. Slowly, reverently, she raised all 4 of her hands and moved them in a complex, flowing pattern that was far more elaborate and beautiful than the human equivalent. It is like watching poetry written in the air, Queen Violara whispered, her voice filled with wonder. How do I make my hands do that? Marcus guided the queen through the movements, helping her position her forearms to match her daughter's gestures. It was awkward at first. The queen's hands were used to formal ceremonial positions, not the fluid communication her daughter had developed. But as she practiced, something magical began to happen. Princess Lyrelei began to sign encouragement to her mother, her hands moving in rapid, excited patterns. She is saying you are doing well, Marcus translated. She is telling you that you are the first person to try to learn her language. She is saying she has dreamed of this moment her entire life. Queen Valara's hands trembled as she attempted to sign back to her daughter. The movements were clumsy and uncertain, but the intent was clear. Princess Lyrelei's eyes filled with tears as she watched her mother struggle to form the words, I love you, in her language. Around them, the chamber had gone completely silent. Even the most aloof alien dignitaries seemed transfixed by the scene unfolding before them. Ambassador Crix had stopped looking terrified and was now watching with something that looked like awe. Your Majesty, Marcus said softly, your daughter wants to tell you something else. Princess Lyrelei began signing in long, flowing movements, her face animated with an emotion that had been suppressed for years. Marcus watched carefully, then began to translate. She says that she has watched you worry about her, and she has wished every day that she could tell you she is not broken. She says she has seen you bring healer after healer, and she has wanted to explain that they cannot fix something that is not wrong. She says she has felt your love in the way you look at her, in the way you touch her face, in the way you stay close to her during ceremonies, even when the advisors say she should be sent away for her disrespect. Queen Valara made a sound that was somewhere between a sob and a gasp. All this time she understood that I loved her, even though she could not hear me say it. Yes, Your Majesty. And she has been trying to love you back in the only way she knew how. The queen looked at her daughter with new eyes, seeing not a rebellious or sick child, but a young woman who had been trying to communicate across an impossible divide. What else does she want to tell me? Princess Lyrelei's signing became more animated, and Marcus found himself smiling as he translated. She says she has many questions about the kingdom, about the stars, about why different beings look so different from each other. She says she has watched the ceremonies and tried to understand why everyone moves in certain patterns. She wants to know if she can learn to help rule the kingdom, or if her hand speech makes her unsuitable for leadership. Queen Valara's forearms moved in what Marcus was beginning to recognize as determination. Tell my daughter that her hand speech does not make her unsuitable for anything. Tell her that a ruler who can communicate in ways others cannot is more valuable, not less. Tell her that I have been a fool not to see the strength she has developed by navigating a world that did not understand her. As Marcus translated, Princess Lyrelei's entire posture changed. The careful, controlled demeanor she had maintained throughout her life was replaced by genuine happiness and excitement. She signed rapidly to her mother, then turned to Marcus. She wants to know if you will stay to teach both of you more of this communication. Marcus translated. She also wants to know if there are others like her among the humans. Marcus felt a warmth spreading through his chest. Your Majesty, I would be honored to help you and the princess learn to communicate more fully. And yes, there are many humans who are deaf, and they are valued members of our society. We have learned that diversity in how people think and communicate makes us stronger, not weaker. Queen Valara stood from her throne, and the entire chamber seemed to hold its breath. When royalty stood during a formal ceremony, it usually meant either great honor or great displeasure was about to be bestowed. Human Marcus Chen, the queen said, her voice carrying across the chamber. "You have given me back my daughter. You have shown me that what I thought was a problem to be solved was actually a gift to be understood. You have demonstrated something about humanity that no speech about achievements or peaceful intentions could have conveyed." She paused, looking around the chamber at all the assembled dignitaries. "You have shown us that humans notice when others are suffering, even when it would be safer to stay silent. You have shown us that humans are willing to risk their own safety to help others find connection and understanding." Marcus felt his heart racing as he realized the Queen was about to make some kind of official declaration. Around him, he could sense the alien delegates leaning forward, recognizing that something significant was happening. "This is what we need among the stars," Queen Violara continued. "Not just more technology or trade agreements, but beings who understand that true strength comes from making sure no one is left behind, no one is misunderstood, and no one has to suffer alone when help is possible." The Queen's luminous eyes fixed on Marcus with an intensity that seemed to see right through him. "You asked why humans deserve a place among the civilized worlds. You have just shown us that the question should be, can the civilized worlds afford to move forward without the human perspective?" "Your Majesty," Marcus began, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to do. "Before I answer your question about humanity's place among the stars, I must tell you something about your daughter that I believe you need to know." A shocked silence fell over the chamber. Ambassador Crix made a strangled sound behind him, and Marcus could feel the collective intake of breath from every alien present. Speaking about the royal family without permission was not just a breach of protocol, it was potentially an act of war. Queen Violara's forearms tensed, and her luminous eyes narrowed dangerously. "You dare to speak of Princess Lyrelei without invitation? Explain yourself immediately, human, or face the consequences of your impudence." Marcus felt sweat beading on his forehead, but he pressed on. "Your Majesty, your daughter is not sick and she is not being disrespectful. She cannot hear your words because she was born without the ability to process sound. In human terms, she is deaf." The Queen's expression shifted from anger to confusion. "Impossible. The royal healers have examined her countless times. They have found nothing wrong with her ears or her mind. They have concluded that she simply chooses not to listen. With respect, Your Majesty, your healers may not understand this condition because it is different from physical damage to the ears," Marcus explained, his heart pounding. "Some beings are born with minds that process the world differently. Your daughter has been trying to communicate with you all her life, but not through sound." Marcus turned slightly so that both the Queen and Princess Lyrelei could see him clearly. "Your Majesty, your daughter has been speaking to you with her hands. She has developed her own language of movement and gesture. She has been trying to tell you that she loves you, but she cannot hear your words of love in return." Queen Vailara's forearms went completely still. "What do you mean, speaking with her hands?" "May I demonstrate, Your Majesty?" Marcus asked, knowing he was pushing the boundaries of royal patience to their absolute limit. The Queen nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on him with an intensity that could have cut through steel. Marcus turned to Princess Lyrelei and began to sign. "Your mother wants to understand you. Will you show her how you speak with your hands?" Princess Lyrelei's eyes went wide with surprise and hope. She looked from Marcus to her mother, uncertainty written across her features. "She wants to learn my hand words?" "Yes," Marcus signed back. "Tell her you love her." The princess hesitated for a moment, then slowly, carefully, began to sign toward her mother. Her four hands moved in graceful, deliberate patterns, and her face was filled with more emotion than she had shown since entering the chamber. Queen Violara watched in fascination as her daughter's hands moved. "What is she saying?" she asked Marcus, her voice softer now, filled with wonder rather than anger. "She is telling you that she loves you, Your Majesty. She is saying that she has always loved you, even when she could not respond to your words. She is saying that she has watched you worry about her, and it breaks her heart that she cannot tell you she is not sick, just different." The Queen's luminous eyes began to shimmer with unshed tears. "She has been trying to speak to me all this time?" "Every day, Your Majesty. When she moves her hands at her sides, when she seems to be ignoring formal ceremonies, she is actually trying to communicate. She has been alone in a world of silence, surrounded by people who love her but cannot understand her." Marcus watched as understanding dawned on the Queen's face. The frustration and worry that had been evident in her posture melted away, replaced by something that looked like heartbreak and hope combined. Can you teach me? Queen Velara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Can you teach me to speak with my daughter's hands? The request sent a ripple of shock through the assembled crowd. Several of the alien delegates began speaking in hushed tones, clearly disturbed by this unexpected turn in the formal ceremony. Ambassador Crix looked like he was about to faint, his 6 arms wrapping around himself in what Marcus assumed was a gesture of extreme distress. Your Majesty, Marcus said carefully, I would be honored to help you learn to communicate with Princess Lirelai, but I should tell you that there are others in your kingdom who already know this language. Your daughter mentioned that she has seen servants using hand speech, but they were not allowed to teach her because of her royal status. Queen Vailara's expression darkened, but not with anger toward Marcus. Are you saying that there were those who could have helped my daughter all along, but they were prevented from doing so by court protocol? It appears so, Your Majesty. The very rules meant to protect the princess may have kept her isolated from those who could have helped her. The queen was quiet for a long moment, her 4 arms moving in what Marcus was beginning to recognize as deep thought patterns. Around them, the chamber remained silent, but Marcus could feel the tension building. This was far from any formal diplomatic ceremony anyone had expected. Finally, Queen Vailora spoke again, her voice carrying new determination. Human Marcus Chen, you have shown me something about my own daughter that I have failed to see for her entire life. You have given me hope that I can finally truly communicate with my child. But tell me, why did you risk breaking our protocols to tell me this? You must have known the danger. Marcus thought of his sister Sarah, of all the moments of connection that had been possible once their family learned to communicate across the barrier of deafness. He thought of Princess Lirelai's desperate signing and the years of loneliness she had endured. Your Majesty, where I come from, we have a saying, no one should have to be alone when understanding is possible. I could not watch your daughter suffer in isolation when I had the ability to help bridge the gap between you. Queen Valara studied him for a long moment, then turned to look at her daughter, who was watching the exchange with growing hope and amazement. Show me, the queen said finally. Show me how to tell my daughter that I love her. Marcus made his choice. Slowly, carefully, he began to move one hand while still maintaining his bow. He kept the motion small and discreet, hoping that only the princess would notice. Using the basic sign language he had learned for his sister, he signed back to her. I understand you. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Princess Lirelai's eyes widened in shock and her hands stopped their desperate movements. For a moment she simply stared at him as if unable to believe what she had seen. Then tentatively she signed back, You can see my words? Marcus risked a slightly larger movement, signing, Yes, are you okay? The princess's entire posture changed. The isolated, desperate quality that had surrounded her melted away, replaced by an excitement that she struggled to contain within the formal setting. Her signs became more animated. No one has ever understood my hand speech before. The healers say my ears are broken, but my mother believes I am simply choosing not to listen to show disrespect. A chill ran down Marcus's spine as he realized the full scope of the situation. The princess wasn't just deaf. Her condition was completely misunderstood by her own people. They thought she was being rebellious when in reality she simply couldn't hear them. The isolation she must have felt her entire life was beyond anything Marcus could imagine. Your ears are not broken in a bad way, Marcus signed back, drawing on what he had learned from his sister's experiences. Many humans are born this way. You are not disrespectful. You just communicate differently. Princess Lirelai's 4 hands moved in a flurry of signs, years of pent-up communication pouring out of her. I have tried so hard to understand what everyone wants from me. I watch their mouth movements and try to copy them, but I cannot hear the sounds they make. Sometimes I see others moving their hands like you do now, but they stop when they see me watching. They think I am too important to learn their servant speech. Marcus's heart broke for her. Not only was she deaf in a society that didn't understand deafness, but there were apparently other sign language users who had been prevented from teaching her because of her royal status. She had been isolated by the very position that should have given her access to everything. What you do with your hands is not servant speech, Marcus signed. It is a beautiful language. In my world, many people use hand speech. Even those who can hear learn it to speak with their friends and family who are like you. The princess's excitement grew, but she was careful to keep her facial expression neutral, for the benefit of the watching crowd. My mother thinks I am sick in my mind because I do not respond when she speaks. She has brought many healers, but they all say I am choosing to ignore her. They do not understand that I cannot hear her love words. Marcus felt a surge of anger at the misunderstanding that had caused so much pain for both mother and daughter. He could see Queen Vylara from the corner of his eye, still maintaining her formal posture but occasionally glancing at her daughter with what looked like concern and frustration. "Would you like me to help your mother understand?" Marcus signed. "I could explain why you do not respond to sound words." Princess Lyra Lee's signing became rapid and excited. "You would do this? But I have heard the servant speakers say that humans are new to the star paths. You could be punished for speaking when not asked. Why would you risk danger for someone you do not know?" The question went straight to the heart of what made humans human, and Marcus found himself thinking of his sister Sarah, of all the people who had helped their family learn to communicate, of the teachers and friends who had made sure Sarah never felt alone or isolated. "Because where I come from, we believe that no one should be alone when others can help," Marcus signed. "My sister is like you, and I know how it feels to watch someone you care about struggle to be understood." The princess was quiet for a moment, her hands still. When she began signing again, her movements were careful and deliberate. "I have dreamed of finding someone who could understand my hand words. But if you speak for me now, the council members will be angry. They already think humans are too bold and should not be trusted with important matters." Marcus realized she was right. Speaking out of turn wouldn't just break protocol. It could confirm every suspicion and prejudice that existed against humanity in the galactic community. But looking at her, seeing the hope in her eyes mixed with concern for his well-being, Marcus knew that some things were more important than politics. "Some risks are worth taking," he signed. "Your mother loves you. I can see it in how she looks at you. If she understands why you cannot hear her, maybe the healers will learn too. Maybe other young ones like you will not have to be alone." Princess Lyra Lee's hands trembled slightly as she signed. "You are very brave. But if you do this thing, you must be sure. My mother's anger can be significant." Marcus thought about Ambassador Crix's warnings, about the delicate nature of human-alien relations, about his own career and future. Then he thought about his sister Sarah, about the day she had finally been able to tell their parents that she loved them in a language they could all understand. "I am sure," he signed. Queen Vylara finally gestured for him to rise from his bow. Marcus straightened slowly, his mind racing as he prepared to do something that could either bridge two worlds or destroy any hope of peaceful relations between them. The Queen's luminous eyes fixed on him with an intensity that seemed to look right through him. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Human Delegate Marcus Chen, you may speak. Tell us why your people believe they deserve a place among the civilized worlds." This was his moment. Marcus could give the carefully prepared speech about human achievements and peaceful intentions. Or he could risk everything to help a lonely princess and her worried mother understand each other. Marcus took a deep breath and made a choice that would change everything. Marcus Chen stood perfectly still in the ornate receiving chamber of the Zephyrian royal palace, his hands clasped behind his back as instructed. The diplomatic escort who had brought him here, a tall, blue-skinned alien with 6 arms named Ambassador Crix, had been very clear about the rules. Human delegates were to remain silent unless directly addressed by Queen Vylara herself. They were to bow when she entered. They were not to make sudden movements or speak out of turn. The chamber stretched high above them with crystalline walls that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. Dozens of alien dignitaries from across the galaxy filled the space, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. Some floated rather than walked, others had multiple heads that whispered among themselves, and a few resembled nothing more than geometric patterns that shifted and changed as they moved. Marcus had been chosen for this mission precisely because of his ability to remain calm under pressure. As Earth's newest diplomatic attaché, he understood the importance of first contact protocols. Humanity was still the newcomer in galactic society, having only discovered faster-than-light travel 3 years ago. One wrong move could set back human-alien relations by decades. "Remember," Ambassador Crix whispered, his voice carrying the slight electronic translation that all alien speech required. "The Queen values silence and contemplation above all else. The Zephyrians believe that unnecessary speech pollutes the mind. You must not speak unless she grants you explicit permission. Marcus nodded slightly, watching as the massive doors at the far end of the chamber began to glow with an ethereal light. The conversations around them died away instantly, and every being in the room turned toward the entrance. Even the floating aliens descended closer to the floor in what Marcus assumed was their version of a respectful posture. Queen Vylara entered with a presence that seemed to command the very air around her. She stood nearly 8 feet tall, her skin a deep purple that sparkled with tiny points of light like stars. Her forearms moved with graceful precision, and her large, luminous eyes swept across the assembled crowd with ancient wisdom. Behind her walked a smaller figure, clearly her daughter, who shared the same purple skin but stood only about 6 feet tall. What immediately caught Marcus's attention was how the princess moved differently from her mother. While Queen Vylara acknowledged the crowd with subtle nods and gestures, the younger Zephyrian seemed to look right through everyone, her eyes focused on something no one else could see. Her hands moved constantly at her sides, making small, quick motions that reminded Marcus of something familiar, though he couldn't quite place what. The queen reached her throne, an impressive structure that seemed to be carved from a single massive crystal. She settled onto it with fluid grace, her forearms arranging themselves in what was clearly a formal position. The princess took her place on a smaller throne beside her mother, but Marcus noticed she never once looked up at the crowd. Instead, her attention remained fixed on her hands, which continued their subtle movements. Ambassador Kree stepped forward and began the formal greetings, his voice echoing in the vast chamber as he introduced each delegation. The Andromedans were acknowledged first, their crystalline bodies chiming softly as they bowed. Then came the Sector 7 Trade Federation, followed by representatives from the Outer Rim colonies. And finally, Ambassador Crix announced, "We present Marcus Chen, representing the Human Coalition of Earth." Marcus stepped forward and executed the bow he had practiced hundreds of times during the journey here. He kept his eyes down, waiting for the queen to acknowledge him before rising. But as he held the position, something unexpected happened. From the corner of his eye, he caught sight of the princess's hands again. This time the movements were clearer, more deliberate, and suddenly Marcus realized what they reminded him of. His younger sister Sarah had been born deaf, and their family had learned sign language when Marcus was 12 years old. The princess wasn't just making random gestures, she was signing. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The princess was deaf and she was trying to communicate, but no one around her understood what she was saying. Marcus felt his heart rate increase as he watched her signs become more agitated, more desperate. She was saying something over and over, her hands moving in the same pattern. "Help," she was signing. "Please help me." Marcus remained in his bow, his mind racing. Every instinct told him to respond, to let her know that someone understood her. But Ambassador Crix's warnings echoed in his head. Speaking out of turn could destroy everything. It could end humanity's chance at joining the galactic community before it even began. But as he watched the princess's increasingly frantic signs, Marcus knew he couldn't just stand there and do nothing. She was alone in a room full of people, trying desperately to communicate, and everyone was ignoring her because they didn't understand. The isolation in her movements was heartbreaking, reminding him of his sister's early struggles before their family learned to bridge the communication gap. Queen Vylara had still not given him permission to rise from his bow, and protocol demanded that he wait. But the princess's signing was becoming more urgent, her 4 hands moving in complex patterns that spoke of distress and confusion. Marcus could see tears beginning to form in her large eyes, though she kept her face carefully composed in the formal setting. The weight of the moment pressed down on him. In a few seconds, he would have to make a choice that could change everything. He could follow protocol and remain silent, letting this young being suffer in isolation, or he could break every rule he had been given and try to help her. The silence in the chamber stretched on, broken only by the soft sounds of alien breathing and the rustle of various beings shifting their positions. Marcus's hands trembled slightly as he held his bow, knowing that whatever he decided in the next few moments would determine not just his own fate, but possibly the future relationship between humanity and the Zephyrian Empire.